Now, this is an interesting thing you might not know, and this is when you do the research on a scale model or semi-scale model, these are the kind of things you find out. The early Typhoons, they would be just flying along having a grand old time, and the whole tail would come off. Everything from this piece back would fly off the plane. Now, the only comment I heard in the books I read is the pilots at least had one thing going for them. When they bailed out of the plane, they didn't have to worry about flying into the rudder and hitting it. Anyway, a later modification was, and I thought this was very interesting, I'd put this on a tape, is how they put little fish plates around the whole seam, and we might be able to duplicate that when we do the ink job. Typhoon had a very high-tech for its time 24-cylinder Sabre Napier engine. Not the most reliable in the very beginning, but toward the end of the war they got to be bulletproof. Bulletproof, I love that word. And boy, if there ever were a variety of paint schemes that you can duplicate, all kind of invasion stripe, identification stripe possibilities, camo possibilities. I've counted about 6 different variations of camo so far. As I've said before, I just love doing the research on this. I read about, from the books I have, virtually every day I read something about World War II British warbird related things. Very interesting. All right, let's get down the shop and get to work. Last left on molding projects, the cowlings were all drying. The plug needed have another coat or two of primer, and we were waiting patiently for Dave Midgley to come down to possibly lay up our first wing test panel. You may notice tonight that I'm talking kind of funny, and it isn't funny. I had tremendous oral surgery, and believe it or not, it's a real handicap not to be able to talk. So what I did, I spent the whole day decorating the house and decorating the tree with Karen, putting up some Christmas stuff, and wanted to personally thank Warren Walker, who contributed this really neat tree. And Warren, I hope we're going to see some pictures of your tree soon. Anyway, oh, believe me, I hate Dennis. Now what I did, I had a tooth that was cracked and it had to come out in 2 pieces. Not a pleasant experience. Anyway, happy, merry, best wishes, everything to your family from us. And it's actually supposed to snow in the next couple of days. Well, it's snowing on Karen's dollhouse here. Some of our unique Christmas ornaments that we always decorate with George Aldrich. We even have an ornament for Midgley here. Just thought you'd enjoy seeing our tree. Sharing the Christmas with us. Sharing oral surgery. Oh, my tooth hurts. Sharing oral surgery with Wendy. Doesn't get more intimate than that. When you go to a dentist, always get one of these. Oh man. This actually, and I know you want to share this. I know you want to see what my old tooth. This actually was part of Wendy. Isn't that terrible? You wonder why I had a toothache. Came out in 2 pieces. It's part of the Typhoon, and I was thinking some way I'm going to put this as tip weight in a Typhoon or something. Anyway, we're not going to work in the shop today. I can tell you is, Peeps took it like a man today. He took his oral surgery like a man, and he's getting back to work tomorrow. Oh, that hurts just talking. Whew. Anyway, Peeps, you would have been proud of me. I didn't cry one tear. The dentist had to hold me down. You would have been proud of me, Peeps. Anyway, we're going to get back to working on the shop tomorrow. We've been prepping up the molds for the weekend, but I'll tell you, there's nothing like a toothache to ruin your whole day. A beak ache. And we even share our oral surgery with you. But anyway, we're going to get back in the shop, work tomorrow. It'll be a new day. Can't wait till this anesthesia wears off. I started off today. Boy, this mouth is still tender. Ooh. Started off today. I pulled the 3rd cowling out, and what I've got is each one is a little bit lighter. Each one is a little bit nicer. And I'm getting to the point where I know, for instance, what I'm going to do to one last thing here. I'm going to try to lay up one more with 1 layer less of carbon. You can see these have just pulled out of the mold, and there's a lot of extra resin in there. I really put too much resin in here, but even this is light as a feather. But I think I can make it a little bit lighter. I'll do that off camera. We're going to wind up with, well, it doesn't even matter. In the case with any molded part, you just keep making them. And then like picking balsa, you take the best one, put it on your competition plane. Keep the second one for a spare, in case you, whatever, have a need to retrofit the plane or refinish it or whatever. But once you have that mold made, you're on a sliding pond coming down. Do it off camera, of course, but each time I've been putting the release agent in there, so they've just been popping right out of here. There isn't even one little spot on this mold that's deteriorated so far, and even though we don't need to do that, it's always a good idea to use the spray parting agent. Anyway, we'll do the 4th one off camera, and then we'll be ready to start evaluating which one we're actually going to look at for using on a plane. Now the next step for Mike is, and Mike's going to work on this probably the whole part of the day here, is Sikkens M600s, some 600 sandpaper, and just knocking this coat of silver down, looking for any little flaws that are still in the material. Now what we have on here is 1 coat of silver filler, 1 coat of regular silver, so this is going to come right off. And 1 phone call. President Kajeski on the phone. Let me get a look at how that's coming out. See, do most of it by feel. Don't do it by look, because it looks awful. When you sand that silver, you always get sick. Oh, look, you know, it's like, I shouldn't say like having your teeth pulled out with what happened yesterday. But it isn't, it's not bad. Okay, but the feel, it's look for, now where that edge was, you had a sharp edge there? Yeah, right, okay. So just if you get everything set, this is probably the last day we'll be able to paint before the big snow gets here. Famous last words, huh? You want to be careful of is when you do the wing, you want to do the bays first. Jeez, look at this phone, unbelievable. President Silver on the phone. Now that's going pretty quick, right? Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing is, with any of this sanding the silver, is if we give it, how many days? Dry in 4 days, 3 days? I don't know. Oh, yeah. The longer it dries, the easier it's going to sand. If you sand it wet with M600, it goes very quickly. If you try to sand it dry, you wind up using 1,000,000 sheets of paper. Just make sure this guy's not cheating me using something else. 600, okay. 600 Kajeski. Now always be careful on the edges when you're going around the edges here. The edges are always where you're going to break through, especially when you're sanding wet. If you break through, you won't see it till you wipe the part off. You know what I mean? All right, so we'll get that whole thing sanded before I do any other work here. I got plenty of other things to do while you're working on that anyway. That's no problem. While Mike's sanding out that silver, it's a good time for me to take care of this if we're going to set up the spray. They said big snow is coming tomorrow, so what we're trying to do is rush through and get one more coat of primer on this plug and get Mike's silver sprayed. You can see all the little imperfections. First thing we're going to try to do, and there's a couple up here. This material, once you get it wet, M600, and then I'll dress off the whole part. You know how quickly that fills in. And the trick is make sure it's good and dry, give it plenty of time to dry. We got some other little flaws here, and we'll sand the whole part out, and then that'll be ready for the next coat of primer. Is winning the race to see who can sand out their part the quickest. Anyway, this is one of the steps. If you tough it out and get this extra little sanding in, the finish is not only going to be lighter, it's going to be easier to buff, it's going to be smoother, it's going to be nicer in every possible way. And this is one of the things a lot of people just don't want to pay the price to put a little extra time in here. Luckily, Mike's a tough guy. And to prove how tough he is, he's going to let me take one of his teeth out on camera later. You like that tooth, huh, Mike?
Nice job.
Macho. Things whenever I'm doing the last, what I hope is going to be the last or one of the last coats of primer, I always add a little bit of retarder so it tends to flow out a little bit nicer. I also, and I didn't realize that it had not been put in this mix. See, any kind of primer, especially Brodak primer, has the solids will sink even in one day down to the bottom. You need to get that back in suspension. And after I do this, and this is a really neat little trick, after I do this, get it where it's almost all broken up, I dropped a nut, a ball bearing, anything in there, wood screw, anything, and what will happen is, now while I'm painting, you can hear that rattling around in there. While you're doing that, it's homogenizing the primer and getting it ready. Now another thing I always do, because I never take the primer out of this gun, I always take the tip off, and as soon as I'm done painting, I just keep the tip in thinner. And by keeping the tip in thinner and the paint in the gun, it saves an awful lot of time and an awful lot of energy cleaning the gun, because the gun really never gets dirty. It's this little tip up here. And even if it did, you're really not going to clean it every time. But that little ball bearing, a little nut, anything in there, just rattling around when you're doing primer, especially the last coat. You don't want any little chunks coming out. We really want to have on this last coat, want this to go on just nice and thin, got a little bit of retarder in it. And that's what we want. Now it's just just hold it up. Okay. All right, we'll put that out in the garage to dry, and then we can work on your silver stuff. See, as soon as you see you're going through here, that's about it. There's a spot right here. You always use your hand to find those little spots. And even in this case here, where this is kind of low, you could take and trowel on some of the green stuff. Right. That's on the bottom anyway. You're not even not gonna make a project. Let me see how the top came out. Flip it over. Okay, that's just about what we need before the final coat. Just the silver in the low spots. You got the bays done. Yeah, that's looking pretty good.
Okay.
Now this is about how I like to see the wing before I put the next coat of silver on it. Maybe this will be the last coat, we don't know. Because the woodedness was so light, this wing was under 12 ounces. We're not worried about putting, really even worrying about putting paint on it, but we're trying to get it perfectly smooth. Mike's out there painting the little parts already. I'm just trying to look any little spot I see, like right in here, right along here, right along the cap strips. That's where we want to see some extra material. Let's see how the killer is doing out here. Oh, it's so much. Oh, working in 10 below zero. Oh, he's there. Look at this killer. Spray away, baby. Boy, we're getting ready for the big snows, the snows of winter here. Now one thing, the paint usually takes a little longer to dry in this cold weather. Definitely below freezing, there's ice on everything. But we let it dry out in the garage and it seems to lay down real nice. The worst thing is to have it dry too fast. In cold weather it takes plenty. It'd take a whole extra couple days to dry out. But boy, when you're done. Boy, that's a good feeling when you have that done, huh?
And my shoe too.
Yeah, look, he has the new Silverado shoes and hands.
I look like the Tin Man in the Wizard of Oz here.
Look at all this stuff. Hey, sitting right by our Z-Tron over here, ready to fly if it ever goes above freezing.
Yeah.
All right, Bada Bing, time for coffee. Let's put some kits together.
Yep.
I'm freezing out here. Now trust me, there aren't many more things in model aviation more fun than punching out. I think we have 1,100 of these parts to punch out. Come on, Mike, you got to admit this is more fun than going flying, isn't it?
This is it.
Now see, if we could train peeps to do this would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, this looks like SIG did their usual great job. The laser cuttings as crisp as can be on these, and the ribs are even numbered. Little upgrade to the kit. Several little upgrades on this next batch of kits. Mike today is doing a little modification. These are the plywood doublers that come in a Cardinal kit. He tack glued them together with CA. And we're going to make an 8-inch nose, exactly the same as the Typhoon, because this plane is slated to have a Sato 72. So you can see what we've done is make the back of this, the spinner back plate to the nose 8 inches based on the fact that the Sato 72 fits nicely in Super Tiger 60 mounts. He already had the crutch made for a Tiger 60, but that won't be a problem at all. So the first step is we want to cut the doublers, 8-inch nose moment arm, and then we'll lay out the fuselage sides.
Okay.
While Mike is making his doublers, let me suggest that anybody making a fuselage and they anticipate using a Sato 72, you don't want to make the nose 10 or 9. We're using this 8-inch calculation. I did kind of a seat of the pants calculation, and Noel Drindak did a scientific one, and we both came out with an 8-inch nose moment arm. So the Typhoon, as you probably can see, is going to wind up having an 8-inch nose. Mike's Cardinal, which is going to have a Miss Ashley type tail. And by the way, right now we are in the process of tooling up to make laser cut ribs for Miss Ashley. So people that want to make a Miss Ashley will have the option of having laser cut ribs. Never have to cut a set of ribs out. But this took a lot of time to this part of it, it doesn't look like it did, but it took a lot of time to figure that out. Perfect, huh, boy? Okay, Mike's got all the 1/8" wood fuse sides laid up. He's weighed them up, but now we don't want to take the two lightest. What we want to take are two of the straightest. And I wish we had ones that were totally sea-grain. Go through these, Mike.
Okay.
We're going to make a regular fuselage up. Go through them carefully. Anyone, see that one's got a bow in it. We don't want that one. First thing we're doing is we're truing up one edge. We're actually going to true up both edges, but we want the part of the fuselage that's going to be on the thrust line. I want that to be perfectly straight for laying up a fuselage crutch. Now, it doesn't matter if you're laying up, you know, Miss Ashley, or you're laying up a profile cardinal or what. You need a datum line. You need a line from which everything else references off as level. And in our case, it's the top edge of the fuselage. Now do that with both pieces, Mike.
Yeah.
And then we'll lay out the doublers, the tail moment arm, all the other little stuff. You guys don't know anything about flying. Let me teach you about flying. You don't need balsa wood to fly, you need feathers. It is fun working in the shop with him, though. He really is a character. See how crooked that is? Even if you didn't have this straight ruler, you'd be in trouble. So get a straight edge and then mark it with one of those colored markers so we know which edge is going to be the straight edge that we work off. Mark which edge. I mark it right inside so I know that's the edge we want as the fuselage top. Any kind of pen will mark it or whatever. Okay. Those are your two straight edges now.
Okay. Okie dokie.
Want to get it? Yeah, I'll hold the wood. Get a center line. And we're going as far back as the end of the flap. I just roughed one in here. That's going to be the center line now when we line up the wing cutout. Okay. Now, we know this is 9 inches is the nose moment, so the front of your rib, where's the rib? Put that rib on there. Okay. And you want to get the back lined up here. Okay. You want to have this nice and straight. That your doubler is going to set this in place. You don't have to cut that out now. Next thing you want to do is put a center line on the other piece and glue the two doublers in place. Put a center line, put the same center line on that piece and glue the two doublers on. And the most important thing, make sure you don't make two the same. I'm an expert at doing that. I am the world's best at making two left fuselage sides. That's what you got to do, is just get it, because you want them to be mirror images at this point in time too. And get the doublers glued on. What we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of a curve into the crutch that's already made, a little bit of a curve, and we don't want to glue the last little bit, so we're only going to put the epoxy from here back, and up here at the last minute we'll pull out the tape so there's no glue up on the front. Now do the same amount on here, and we mark glue 1, glue 2 so that we don't make, I'm sure everybody's made two left sides or right sides or whatever. Okay, mark the glue sides and just put some tape up in the front. Doesn't matter exactly where it has to end, but you don't want any glue getting up on the last little bit here, because when we're all done we want to glue those two sides together and pull them together.
Yeah, baby.
Mix it up. Now we're using slow drying epoxy where one tube's bigger than the other. And what's nice is we're making a composite fuselage and a wood fuselage pretty much at the same time, step by step by step. They're both going to have the 8-inch nose moment, 17.5 tail moment, and then we're just going to cosmetically make this a cardinal where the other one will be a Typhoon. Always good when you're going to epoxy, the side you're going to epoxy, roughen it up with a little bit of sandpaper. Some 80 grit. Epoxy likes to join rough surfaces, CA likes to join smooth surfaces. That's a tip you can put in the bank. This carbide block that we use to just roughen up, it just roughens up, gives the plywood a tooth before you put the epoxy on. Extra chunk of glass, and when we get the epoxy mixed and put on the doublers, we're just going to lay it in between the two pieces of glass under compression. Let's clean all the schmutz off of that. And see, we don't want to get any glue up on the last inch or so, so then we could just, again, pull that nose together. It saves so much carbon. A jar without a label. Anyway, it's the SIG epoxy where one tube is twice the size of the other. It's a 2-to-1 mix. This is the epoxy I prefer. Well, mixing Teflon tubs from Dave Midgley. Very convenient. Well, as predicted yesterday, it snowed, and I'm glad we got all that painting done yesterday. Oh man, nice to be inside with a hot cup of coffee working on models. Nice and warm out there, Mike, by the way. I think we should work out in the garage today.
You went out and checked it out, huh?
Oh, I'm glad we got that painting done yesterday.
Yeah.
The trowel it. 2 mistakes is leaving a whole bunch of it on and adding a 1/2 ounce for nothing, and the other mistake is to trowel it all off. So just that you've got a decent amount. Then do the same thing to the plywood. We're working off a piece of tin foil. Why? Because we don't have any more wax paper. Mikey ate the wax paper. Okay.
I didn't bring it.
Okay, get the other side too. The side of the plywood that you're going to lay on there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to join them together and pull them apart and make sure we have a good contact on the whole plywood piece. Because it serves 2 purposes. It makes it stronger. It also makes it fuel proof that years later if you get a little bit of oil or grease, it doesn't start soaking into the wood and destroying the whole nose. Planes like this, when they get to be 8-10 years old or more, you're always glad you have that nose seal, that plywood seal. No matter how oil soaked the outside gets, you don't get the internal joints where they're getting ready to let go. Now just use the trowel to get a smooth amount. Get those hairs out of there too. That'll make it too heavy. The plane will never fly. See how much extra comes? You just use that little tub that Midgley gave us? Okay. What a guy. Alright, now you want to press it together, Mike. Press it up, and let's just see that you got a good bond on the whole surface. Just pat it down. There's a real good chance you'll have it because you've coated both sides, but I've seen guys just paint one side, put it on, and you peel up when and there's big air pockets in there. Okay, now pull it up and let's see. See if you've got a bond on the whole piece. There you go. Okay, that's the ticket. Okay, lay it up. And then go out and do the other part. And then we'll squeeze them under glass. It oozes out. You can pretty much clean it up with alcohol and a paper towel, isopropyl alcohol. Clean it all up, clean your fingertips. And as you're doing it, press it down. Okay, this is a good way to ooze out the last little bit of the epoxy too. Just roll it and then wipe the roller with the alcohol. Go right up to the end. This is our little, I don't know what they use. They bought it in an art supply store for about $5. Okay. Now you ready to do the other one, and then we'll get them squeezed together. Clean up anything that oozes out with that alcohol, though. Don't let anything ooze out. Because once it's clean, then we're going to put it on the glass table. We don't want to have flip it over even. You're going to see there's stuff oozed on the other side.
Yeah.
Flip that side over and you'll see. The cleaner you can make it now, less sanding, less aggravation. See what you got on the other side. Oh, you already taped it. Cool.
Cool stuff.
No, you didn't get any. Well, you work better than I do.
Oh, good.
Okay, because we just don't want to glue it to the table. And of course, if we had wax paper, Mikey would be so happy.
I remember to bring it.
Yeah, making all those bologna sandwiches with wax paper.
Salami.
I'll bet Peeps took it. Put the 2 sides under compression. Of course, the last thing we'll just pull off the tape. One ready to dry. As soon as Mike finishes the other one, cleans off all the epoxy with isopropyl alcohol, we'll lay that underneath there and give that a chance to dry for maybe an hour, 45 minutes or an hour. The idea, once we have it under the glass, is you can look down and see if you've shifted apart. It looks like we're interested in the 2 datum lines, the top edges. Most of all the top edges. Okay, now if that looks good, put some weights on it, anything. Roll the weight, and we can go have a nice cup of coffee and a cinnamon donut. Thanks to Karen making us cinnamon donuts for lunch.
All right. Well, since Karen made the
What Mike is doing is putting that little bit of a curve in the nose. It saves a lot of, and you want to keep it perfectly perpendicular. You don't want to let it go off to one side. Nothing worse than carving that when you got to carve that, oh man, into that plywood and everything. Just go slow, otherwise that hardwood burns. Mike is doing that. I want to sand this whole coat of primer off, fix any flaws that are in here, and I'm going to get ready to make the base plate. Once we make the base plate on this, get another coat of primer on, I'll be ready to lay up the mold. A little bit of a curve in there. Now if you wanted to, we have a spinner here. This is a 2 1/4 though. And you always take into account the thickness of the fuselage. That'll be about right. You're going to use a 2-inch spinner on this, I'm assuming. But anyway, having that little curve in there, boy, does that save a lot of carving and sanding. That's a great little tip. Now another thing you can do here, while we're waiting for the epoxy to dry, you can roughen up this surface just slightly. Because having this surface mirror smooth is not a good idea. You'd like it to be a little rougher than that so the epoxy gets a tooth. And what this does, it gives the epoxy twice or 3 times the amount of surface, like a washboard. Just slight little scratches. All good little tips. Our crutch ready. We're going to let this dry overnight as the next step. Next day we work on it, we'll be ready to put the crutch into the fuselage, cut out the wing, put the slot for the tail. We'll be looking good, man. Okay, we're going to try to lay up the base plate here while I have Mike's help. I got this fuselage just rough sanded out. We're going to glue it down to this plate and then put the little pieces of wood around the edges to seal it off, so next time we get to work here it'll be dry and we can maybe lay up the mold here. We got that hot stuff down to our base plate. Now we need to make the pieces that are going to go on both sides. That'll become the base for the mold. Okay, so we made the front part. This is going to be our dam. I want to do the same thing in the back, at the back angle, and then I need to make a little piece so that the material will drape off of here a little bit easier. Just a runoff area. Okay, thanks to the ingenious skills of the Kajeski-Ernowski mold making department here. Okay, now what I did, I just put some thin CA. I'm going to put thin CA all along the edges to seal this up, and this will be ready to prime, well, by the time the snow stops. How's your end? Looking good, Mike?
Yep.
Okay. I like using this little sanding, whatever you want to call it, the polywog, to get in that corner. It's that corner that's the most critical of all of them. And then I try to see that both sides are, this side we don't care about, but the side up here that we're sealed, so resin isn't going to flow under there, the gel coat, and that we're sealed up here. And then we could just basically take it outside, assuming it stops snowing, and get some primer on it, another coat of primer. Yukon Mike putting on a coat of beautiful Brodak primer. And the most important thing we got to get is that edge along where the base plate joins the main part has got to be right. And see, because we're doing this with all economy methods, a real molding shop would have hardwood and steel and aluminum and titanium and everything, but you know the reality is you can make a pretty nice part with about $3 worth of balsa wood. And you can use up all that great 10-pound wood that they send you when you order 4 to 6 pound wood. Just get nice smooth coats on. Want to get at least 3 coats on before the day's over. Look at this day, snow-o-matic. Sure, when we paint your plane, it's nice out. We paint my plane, what happens?
Never been nice painting my stuff.
Anyway, talked to Alan Ressinger today. He's aggressively pursuing a Sato 56 project plane. Hope to have some photos from him soon. Warren's going to be doing up some custom, Warren Walker's doing up some custom exhaust work for him. And we're going to be going into primer mode here. 3 coats, unless it snows some more today. And tomorrow Mr. Midgley will be here, and we're going to try to lay up that wing mold. Good practice, huh, Mike?
Yes, sir.
See, Mike is working on his spraying technique, and on an item like this, hell, if you get a run in primer, it's not a big deal. And go out into the wood at least a couple inches. Excellent practice. And boy, that Brodak primer is the material to use in this case. And no matter how many Typhoon fuselages we make off of this mold, they'll all have Mike's little handiwork on them. All right, that's looking great, Mike. Today, this is the material we're going to use, but because it's really cold outside and because our shop temperature has dropped way down, what I'm going to do is mix in a little bit, just a little bit of lacquer thinners with this, make a little paste, and then work that whole edge. I want to get that whole edge a complete radius, not a reverse radius where the epoxy, when I lay this up, the gel coat will get in there. This is one of, when you make it, the first mold you ever make, this is the part that makes you crazy right in the beginning. So I take a little bit of, and this is a good idea, even further on in the finishing, like Mike is up to his silver already on the wing and tail. If there's any flaws, when it's cold out, this is my little, I don't know, not even a trick. I know body people do this all the time. But I need to make this just a bit thinner. Brodak thinner, by the way, is perfect for this. Any kind of lacquer thinners. Now I just want that consistency like of peanut butter, because I want this to take a long time to dry. When I sand that corner in, I want to have a nice sharp edge. Now I like to let it sit a minute and see if it looks like it's too thick, too thin. Keep in mind the temperature in the shop here is really cold now. We have the heat completely off because we're anticipating doing some work with epoxy. That's about the consistency I want. When that material is the right consistency, it'll just sit right in there, make a nice radius. And without that radius, and of course this has to dry quite a while. Can't go right in and sand this because this is thicker than we normally make it. And where we want it thick is down in that radius. That's the reason for thinning it. This is an excellent trick when you're fixing flaws in the silver, which Mike is going to be doing probably within the next couple days. And the other trick is just let it dry completely. Don't rush this dry time at all. Best even if it sits overnight, or put it by a heating vent. And if that starts to thicken up, I'll just add a couple of drops of thinner, but I'm basically going to go around the whole perimeter of the mold and then give that a real good dry time. Now once this dries, and we'll probably let it dry overnight realistically, we're going to work from both edges in. And this is, in making this type of a mold, this is the single most important part of the whole mold, is getting that edge. Because when that edge isn't right, or if it's not straight, the gel coat picks that up and then you crack it all up when you try to take it out. The gel coat is paper thin there and big chunks come out. You need to have that edge a radius in that dimension. But the best thing here is we have lots of other Christmas related things to do today. And this can certainly just sit here and dry overnight. I think that's what we're going to do. That's the next part of this. Now every night at the end of the night I try to evaluate where we're going here. We're making a wooden fuselage, traditional methods, a carbon fiber fuselage, kind of experimental methods. We'll probably be making real soon a traditional wing using laser cut Miss Ashley ribs. And we'll also be making what it amounts to be a test wing. This is totally experimental. And we'll also be making, and we know we're going to be able to do this, this is in the bank technology. We've got plenty of cowls laid up now, plenty of little test parts. And the next step on this is we're going to try to get Dave Midgley to come down. He's slated to be down here maybe even tomorrow. We even have another cowl up in the mold. I forgot I put that one up there. But anyway, that's what's nice and attractive about molding. It seems like possibly even Gerald Champ is be interested in one of these molding jobs. Well, we're going to find out. Everybody that works on this adds a little piece to the puzzle, becomes part of the team. And we're all learning from each other. It's a really, really great time. Okay, Mike's next step on here, and this would be for any fuselages, we have to see the epoxy that oozed out because we had it under extreme pressure. We had it under about 50 pounds of pressure. And there's no glue on this last little bit. What we're going to do is trim this edge with the sandpaper, make sure we have a perfectly straight edge, and then recheck our center line and re-put a center line on the part. You can't put it on this part until you have the pieces joined. Then we've laid out a 17.5 inch tail moment arm, the length of the elevators, and another 1/2 inch to allow for a little bit of a fillet or a little relief for the rayed rudder linkage. So this second line will be the line where we cut it off. And you can, at this point in time, you could trim this angle.
Off, right?
You can get rid of that, but don't trim the bottom yet. Leave the bottom on until we figure out, you know, what your total, the cosmetic part of this is going to be like. You get all that stuff done off camera, and then we'll make the formers up. And it's always good. Use some 80 grit on a block. You can trim the front even though you don't need to. But the big part, once you get the big globs off of there, then take it over to the flat piece of sandpaper that's on the block. They come right off.
Oh yeah.
Because we want to maintain most of all that one edge. That's the most important thing right now, to maintain that edge. Now today, Larry Cunningham sent us some real high quality electrical solder for our next Zetron installation. Larry, we thank you a whole lot. We will be trying this real soon, as we'll be setting up another plane soon as the weather breaks, I hope. And nice to know that Don Dixon will have this plane in Arkansas real soon with his motor, his Max 52, and maybe he'll even retrofit a Zetron into this guy. Can you imagine? Anyway, this is looking like enough to put 100 Zetrons together. Larry, thanks a whole lot. And I hope you're enjoying all this molding stuff. Larry never seems to get enough of molding. Larry, get on a plane and come over here and we'll make you do all the work. What Mike is doing is getting rid of a stressorizer. Whenever you have a piece of plywood end and then wood start, you want to make a nice smooth blend. Get rid of that step. Make it more like an entry ramp. Little details like this, but when you have a plane that you're anticipating 15 years of service from, would you sell for 15 years?
Yes.
Like the real tradition, the original one. Everybody wants the real tradition, including Mike.
I have it.
It's blended in. What's nice is you can see the layers of wood, but it's a smooth transition, and it gets rid of a stressorizer. Next thing you want to do is check. Now that you have a smooth edge, you don't want to check this when there's a glob of epoxy, because then the thing will be like that. Okay, we have the hole for our center line. The cardinal center line is that hole right there. And use the thin pen. Don't use a Sharpie. Use those thin ones we have. So he uses the Sharpie. Okay. You're going to be off by 1/millionth of an inch. Okay, it lines up like a champ. Now let's see if the back one is the same. Because you want to have a center line on both sides. And then we want to lay out that rib. And when you cut that rib out, leave the pen line on. You know what I'm saying? Pen line stays on. Just cut right in. That's enough. That's enough. You're not going to have flaps that big. You only need to go to the end of the flap so it lines up the horn at the same time it lines up the flaps. Lay the wing piece in here. And we pretty much know where that's going to go because the plywood's already pre-cut out. Now just get the tail lined up. Now what's a good idea is put a pen line on there, but leave the pen line on. Because you want that little bit of extra wood when we go to drop the wing in. You want to be able to just fit it rather than shoving shims in there. It's a lot easier to do it this way. To make it easy, you can pin one right to the other with these nice little John Pothier pins. Drop them all in there, and then that holds it in place, because if that thing moves even just a little bit, it makes a sloppy installation when we go to do the wing. Okay, now just remember you leave the pen line on when you cut that piece out, and use a decent blade. Don't use one you shaved with this morning or something. He's working on his fuselage, and I'm opening up today's mail. This came from John Pothier. It's tempered steel ruler. It's extremely, just what we need today, in fact. That is an excellent piece. You see, when you buy a ruler in a store, one of these Home Depot things, all these plastic things, tempered steel means that's going to be real accurate. All right, we'll definitely get to use that. John, thanks a whole lot. We're busy as heck here. I'm going to try to finish up the mail. While Mike's doing this, we have people coming over this afternoon. Go to it, baby. Cutout is not the most important thing, but you want to make sure the center lines. Okay, we're trying to make mirror images. Get the top edge, the edge that we're going to use.
That's this one.
Okay, run that over on the belt stand. Ingolf, give him a hand. You're a nice big tall guy. Ingolf Stevenson comes all the way from Norway to work on Mike's plane. Yeah, hold it so you need as many hands as possible, and just true that edge up. Now once you have that edge, then we can lay out the bottom cutout. See, what we're trying to do is make exact mirror images of that part. Now here's a guy, a professional airline 767 pilot. He comes here, look at the labor we've They're turning you into a mountain goat here, and you don't even know. Oh man. No, the sides are tack glued together. We know we want to have this line a ½ inch less at the back, and I know from building planes that were straight, they always look like they're flying with the tail down, and less than a ½ inch, they look like they're flying with the nose down. So we've settled on that being an optical illusion for how the plane actually flies. Now we're going to trim both of them at exactly the same time. Trim away, Ben, and being when you have this airline pilot here, let him do the hard work. Right down, do both of them at once. This way you know you're getting a mirror image.
Sometimes I feel like I'm seeing it all at once, and it's too much.
Now this is the edge that we just cut. Now in theory you should have complete mirror image sides. And there's nothing worse than if one side is even a little thicker, thinner. From this point on it's all downhill. The minute you don't have, if you just start with mirror images, at least you have a halfway decent chance of getting it right. Make a 4-cycle crutch because it's much shorter. See how much further back this goes? So we don't need this extra material, but we don't want to end this. You'd never want to end it at the same spot of doubler, and so we're going to go right in between and then cut this bevel on a little bit of an angle or put a curve in it. You don't want to have all the, like in a brick wall, you don't want all the joints lining up together. So we'll shoot for right about here, but keep in mind all the hubbub about 4 strokes being heavier. The first thing that's lighter is the crutch is an ounce lighter because it's about 3 inches shorter. I love the smell of burning wood. He burns through.
Can't beat these new blades, huh?
You know, one of these days we got to put a new blade in this saw. Way you usually wind up losing a finger. And move it back and forth on the belt when you do that. There you go. Now it'll come up a lot cleaner. And the objective there is to get rid of the stress riser at all costs. Off our glass. What we're going to do is we're going to make a fixture because we don't have clamps big enough to clamp this while the epoxy's drying. Of course, if you use CA, you don't need clamps. In this case, Mikey's making the 15-year wonder here.
That's it.
Okay, now you want to get the fuse side up here. Put the crutch there. Let's just measure it all out, because the front of it has to stick out where the mount pads are, and we don't want to glue the front. Put the crutch in there. Okay. Leave this stick out just to the end of the motor mount bolts. There you go. Now put the other fuse side in here with the piece up. And now once we get it all glued together and everything lined up, what we'll do is take this piece of wood, we'll have Ingloff press on it like a clamp and CA it in place. How's that look?
I'm impressed, boss.
Are you impressed?
I'm impressed.
Now here, are you impressed?
Looks good.
Oh man,
I was going to use screws.
Where's Peeps? Is Peeps impressed? Okay, so we're gonna make our own clamp here. All right, mix the epoxy. You got it all mixed?
I'm going to have it.
No glue up in the front because we want to bend the nose. We want to get this in position. I've just traced out where that is, so he can get a real nice thin bead of epoxy down there. And we've got the serrated edges here on this. And boy, if there's one part you never want to leave out, never leave out the aluminum. That hardwood. Have you ever made a plane without aluminum and halfway through the season it starts flying down? You tighten the bolts, it starts flying up. Oh man. Okay. I mean, the one thing we don't want to have is 15 years down the road have these motor mounts come off. Well, you and I ain't going to be here in 15. I don't know what we're worried about. In 15 years we're going to be in a nursing home. Or even worse. The Teflon laying down, and Mike's going to take out the first thing, wipe out all the extra. We just to make it a neat job. Some alcohol. Get rid of that. It doesn't matter. You got this is why you don't use 5-minute glue. Use the 45-minute stuff. Plenty of glue oozing out there. Step we squeezed it together is you need to take the piece of Teflon. I guess saran wrap or aluminum foil or wax paper would even be okay. Okay, just that's all. Pull this back. Now you can glue this piece in place. And then once we're going to press this, and first we're going to check the alignment. Let me see, Ingloff. We want to check the alignment. And the way I want to check the alignment, put a T-square through this and make sure the leading edge and the trailing edge are the same this way. See, because we can still move the fuselage sides front to back. Just lay that through. No, the other way. Yeah, I guess that way would work too. There you go. Now see which one is, see this one? Let me just show this. See this one isn't far enough back? So we got to move, hold the ruler right there. Okay, now check the back too. We want the front's more important than the back. We want that dead even. Clamp is glued down there, so we're under pressure now. Make sure that that's equal. Boy, that's the most important. And if it isn't, this is why you use slow drying epoxy, so you can give it that last little fine tuning. It's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, and it's under a lot of pressure now. And the front is still loose, because don't forget, when it's all dry, then we're going to wet this with ammonia a little bit and pinch it together, and you got just saved all that carving and sanding. Now you can take in here and wipe that with a little bit of Q-tip and alcohol. You're in, baby. A clamp, and we're able to manipulate. Just get all a little epoxy. We're going to make the former that would go right in front of the wing now. We'll make it out of light ply. Make it with a 90-degree triangle, because that's going to set that everything here is 90 degrees while these clamps are drying. And by the way, if you've never built a real fuselage, just funny, the other day Warren Walker was talking to me and said, yeah, you ought to show how to build a normal wood fuselage. Thanks, Mike.
No problem.
But anyway, these tips you can use. This is a good way, and all we have is a piece of broken glass here that you can build off. That's all you need to get it nice. All right, now we need to figure out the dimension at the back, right in front of the wing. You need to know the dimension. We ensure that all these sides are 90 degrees, as we've made sure when we make the former, the primary grain is going side to side. In other words, there's 3 laminates. 2 of the 3, the grain is going side to side. Top to bottom, you don't need any strength. In fact, you really would like to have all the strength going in that dimension. But watch what happens when we put this part in here, and it's a really nice tight fit. You can't even see light in the corners. See how this side is crooked? So when you check it with a triangle off the table, you notice it's crooked. And when we button that together, the side checks out at 90, that side checks out at 90. Okay, glue it in, baby. The epoxy's drying. Now check the both sides that you got 90. Check, well, you can't check it up here. If you wanted to, you could make a triangle with a notch cut out of it. But see if the sides are 90. You can even reference off this table, Mike. The two tables are both 90. Now check that you have the former in at 90 degrees too. Lay that triangle in this way and see if that former is front to back. Oh, you got that's no good. The clamp's in the way.
Yeah.
That sets that. We move the clamp back just a little bit. Once you take that out, then put another clamp in front so it pinches it together. Now check from the top that you got 90. That's why you got 90? Okay. See, because you got plenty of time while everything is clamped in dry in here. This gives you plenty of working time.
Plenty of time.
And the epoxy, you get a much better penetration. Now what Mike can do here is we can pinch these together while it's drying, or put a little piece of plywood on one side so we don't put a dent in the wood. Now you can just work some epoxy in there and put clamps on it. And boy, that's a nice, real nice way to do it. Clamps are holding that together. This is being held at 90, the two little glue pieces. And I know everybody in the audience is just saying, wow, cool. This fuselage will be a banana when we're done. We're going to call this fuselage Chiquita Banana. Oh, man. Okay, just clean the joints up and then we'll have a cup of coffee while this is drying. You're okay. I don't care what Ingolf says about you. Just 5-10 minutes with the low setting on the heat gun and you're all set. We have a real special treat. And we don't get this very often here. We actually have some decent weather out there to spray in. So what I wanted to do while Mike's epoxy is, we'll let it sit for another day. What I wanted to do is dress off this edge more than anything else. And you can see what I'm doing. I'm using that little rubber polywog tube. I'm real excited about. Dave has finalized all his plans for this weekend, the trip that we're going to have. He's going to be down here. We are going to lay up the wing. He's got all the vacuum bags done, all the equipment, and we'll probably start that. Well, I'm excited. We've been waiting about 6 months for get all the materials and bagging and Nomex. We have the Nomex now. We have pretty much everything that we're going to need to do that. And this is the hardest part I always find of the mold, to get in that little corner area. And when that corner isn't right, oh man, what a nightmare. Anyway, I'm really excited about the wing project. We have so many projects all going on at the same time. I know some people have no interest in carbon wings, some people have no interest in carbon anything, but certainly Mike's fuselage being totally traditional and being built back to back with this, you can compare the two different ways of doing things. Most important thing before I ever put any more primer on this is to really clean it with M600 well, because this makes kind of a paste that gets on everything, and then when you prime it, if it's not real clean, and I may have to do this even a couple more times, I don't care. Because what I'm really looking for is to get that nice finish on the mold. And for everybody that's ever going to build and fly a Typhoon, I'm really sanding every one of those planes at once. And it makes that paste, and well, it's hard to explain. Anytime you sand that filler too, it can be a problem. You want this to be perfectly clean. Professional stand for doing our priming. 2 garbage cans. Now watch this. I'm going to make this mold appear. Abracadabra. 1, 2, 3. Rory Tennyson. Love magic. Anyway, it's hard to believe, and I know nobody will believe this, but we actually could have gone flying today. Believe me, it's a nice day here. here in blustery New York. But this is the area we really want to work on most of all. So I'll try to get the first coat in there. As always, the Brodak primer just flows right out beautifully. You can see how nice that fillet area is building up. There are some imperfections in it, but we're about 90% there. This may need one more sand out. See, the thing I wanted people to understand that watch your video, they think you don't do this in one shot, in one minute. It's sanding, fixing, over and over and over, and eventually you do get. And if you've picked that up off the tape, great. Let's hope most of the people are. I know people that are already starting making molds, like Larry Cunningham, have picked up some good information. Now I can just lay out. This primer has a lot of thinner in it, so it's very thin. It's going to flow out. It'll flow out very smoothly. Just constantly shake it. I always have that little, there's a nut or a steel washer or something in there. But because each coat is getting thinner and thinner now, I want to be sure I'm getting enough of the filler actually in it. Ready for another 24-hour dry period. Oh man, there's Teflon under there. It shouldn't stick at all. There, it comes right out.
There we go.
Okay. Now see what the Teflon did. The Teflon, any glue that came out, it just made like a molded part. So we can get in there with a Dremel, pull that up. But I don't want to change that shape. So you can leave that there for now. Actually, we just pull those pieces off the glass. Just take the scraper so we can reuse the glass.
Yeah, clean up.
And the next thing we want to do is make the spine part for the fuselage. In the meantime, because we're jiggling a day around here, we have some bad weather we're working around and Mike's job. What we're going to do is we're going to try to get the wheel pants started, the carving of the wheel pants. See, now you want to scrape that glass clean too, so the next guy that's going to use it, not that we care who that next guy is as long as it is no, we can just clean the glass up.
I can go right over the garbage.
And that glass is big enough to make a stab or whatever also. You just scrape it right up. Now what Mike's doing is starting with, because this is going to be for wing mounted gear, it's a little different than when you have the carbon or aluminum gear. You have to run the wire through the wheel pant or we have to invent something here. All we want to do, we took 2 half-inch blocks, used the seam as the center line, and Mike, being an excellent carver, will gladly carve that. While he's carving that, I'm going to be doing what I hope will be one of the last coats of finishing with 1200. Get that all sanded down with 1200, and we're going to have a race. But I have a feeling Mike's going to win. With this, because we're perfectly sealed with, there's plenty of primer on here, I can just use ordinary Windex. It just keeps the smell down in the house. It doesn't cut as aggressively, but right now, because of Karen's health problems, this will save her a little bit. Got to keep her alive, you know. I could never even imagine what my life would be like if I didn't have Karen here to whip me into shape, so to speak. Anyway, this polishes, you can see right here on how quickly this polishes right up. That's the beauty of Brodak primer. Now, one thing you never want to do is use Windex or water on a part that isn't sealed, because if there's even one pinhole where you're going through, what winds up happening, the part absorbs water and then you get this. But this part sands so nice. Actually, when you're sanding Brodak primer out and it's wet, it just comes right off so nice. And I think I'm going to win this race with Mike, because he's still on the first wheel pant, and it looks like I'm almost ready to put some wax on it. How am I doing? Are we winning? What's the score, Mike?
You win.
I win, huh? But look how nice that comes off. Shame is because of the shape of this mold, more than likely, not more than likely, almost guaranteed, we're going to lose this plug. All the work I put into it is really only going to translate out into one mold. If I didn't have that little recess in there, I might be able to get away with, you know, saving the plug, but I doubt it. That's coming off. Always one of the best steps, because right away, even though the primer's not even 24 hours old, you can see it's buffing right up. And this can be time consuming. I'll give this about an hour, half an hour, because I want to let Mikey catch up. Mike's not feeling good about losing out on his wheel pant race we're having. But I wanted to show how quickly, when you're using Gorms, well, that generally comes right up. I hope you know you're not winning this race.
I lost an
You
hour
lost.
ago.
Okay, but just shape it up. Leave it as wide as possible where the wheel is, and then toe the front in and toe the back in. And see how nice. And it comes up very quickly. It doesn't take long. Let's take a dry spot here. You can see how quickly old Gorms does the trick. Just in all of modeling, I've never found anything better than Gorms. Once you see it starting to shine, flip the rag over. I guess it doesn't get a whole lot better than that. Already, Mike still has one wheel pant the car. Boy, well, I jury rigged this race. Yep. And now this is basically going to take the whole day, so Mikey will win the race. We're going to put this on a la, I'm not going to go through this again because we've done it before. The part all wax 4 coats a la Ed Gallagher. Tomorrow we'll be able to put the PVA on here, and the next day, we're actually only 2 days away from being able to lay up the mold. Ed's technology on this, Ed has really been helpful. Some of his ideas have really panned out well, and one of them is this. I used to use paper towels, now I have a nice soft terry cloth, socks, something nice and soft. In his attempt to beat Windy at the wheel pan, look at how nice he did a nice job, that Uncle Mikey.
It only took 15 minutes.
We cheated on the video. Actually, he did beat me. I have 2 more coats of wax to put on that. But what we're going to do here, he's going to final sand these, and then we're going to split them apart and hollow them. And so he really didn't win yet. I don't know why he's gloating like he just won the presidential election in Florida or something here. Anyway, we're going to make up a nice set of wing-mounted gear off of these. Showing Mike, you see, when you're carving a wheel pant, usually you get it from the front. It'll always have flat spots because you do it with a block. So what's real nice is if you can get the sticky back paper on your hand, this gets rid of all those lines in pretty much in a very short amount of time before we split the parts apart again. You see how I'm doing this, Mike?
Yeah.
This will get rid. Don't go back. Don't go in this dimension, or you'll put the lines back in it. Oh yeah, it's perfect. Here.
Okay.
Well, let's see you do it. You're so smart. If we're so smart, how come we're still working here?
Here, yours.
That's the way. Just go back and forth, but don't go in this dimension anyway. You want to get all of the twisting or whatever, all the sanding in that dimension. Because in the final wheel pant, when you're all done, you don't want to have it like an octagon. It'll look, it'll just look cheesy.
It'll look like an octagon.
Like an octagon. Very cute. He's taking a bath, Mike. You're making so much dust in the shop.
Yeah.
You're making them peepster. You're getting everybody wet. Yeah. He doesn't like Mikey grinding away in the shop here.
The hat.
Now he's on my shoulder getting
Doesn't
me
like
wet.
the hat.
He hates the hat. This is the whole key. Are they coming, okay?
Yep.
All right, as soon as they're nice and smooth, then we'll split them apart and hollow them out. And in today's mail, some nice pictures from Jim Hoffman. He sent me these by internet, but I got some hard copies here from the Chola Choppers photo credit to Renee Berger. Anyway, he's got a cool, that's a cool little twin. OS 15 FPs using 8.4 props. Tongue muffler by Grady Widener. Lost foam wing. Monocoat. Profile fuses are made from foam, edged with balsa, skinned with 32nd wood, covered with carbon. Carbon, I like carbon. Anyway, check this out. Cool little plane. Stab elevator and rudder are 1/8 inch balsa. Really needed carbon fiber mat to make them workable. Still too flimsy. No flaps. In his closing thing, I was fortunate enough to win the most unique award at VSC a year ago. Hey, congratulations, Jim. I'm impressed. I like the design. We'll send some of these into Stunt News for you. And thanks a whole lot. Sets up his wheel pants. We have two real choices. One is, once we split them, we need to figure out exactly how he wants to mount the wire, and that's the traditional way. Also the way, well, it's kind of like the way an impact would be mounted, I guess. Casminato mounts it that way, but it's a little bit easier mounting it this way. And the point was, if you choose to mount it this way, you probably could use the fiberglass wheel pants, but Mike wants to have his own custom everything. So we're gonna basically make this set out of wood, but we also have the choice then, if he likes the way they look and the way they fit on a model, we'll be able to make a set using this method. And we almost could probably make them detachable. I'm just thinking possibly make a little plate in here. I think Ted at one time had a little thing where he could screw the but I'm not sure. That I'm not sure, because on a traditional way, when they mount on the V landing gear, of course it's a snap to mount them there. Trouble is with wire, they want to move side to side, up to back. You really have to build a relatively large fillet, and of course we could do that with Aeropoxy Light. But we got to make some choices while Mike is out there carving away. A couple of tips you can use, and Mike is going to be using these. And that is to fly the wires on the plane so that you know they track right. Also, you don't want to have, when you're flying the plane, these are some of the things you can run into, is that they're pointing down, or that they're pointing up, or from the top view that they're towed out, towed in, or even worse, pigeon-toed. So you'd like to, and Mike has already done this, is fly the wires that you're going to use with the wheels. Make sure it takes off and lands exactly the way you want it. Then, of course, when you glue them on, you can get the alignment so that from this angle here, there'll be a perfect match to the center line of the plane. And that's really worth doing. It's really not a small thing, because once those wheel pants are glued on and you bend the wire a little bit to adjust it so it takes off or lands different, those things look terrible if they're pointed down or up or whatever. This is a set of wheel pants that's made that way with the wire coming down the side, and we have a video on how to make these. And by the way, these come apart at the seam, 2 screws, so that you can replace the wheel. That's the whole objective. This is already on video. I don't want to replicate this. You also made, and this is a different shape, this was for another plane. We wanted a real wide one so we could maximize the use of the tire. See, what happens is the soft wheels that most people prefer to light wheels, they eventually wear out. And that's the advantage of making them this way, that you can take the 2 pieces apart, take the wheel out, replace it, and just put this piece back in with a brand new wheel. So it just gives you some of the choices that you have. This is a center wire where it goes around, and here's one with the wire offset to one side. So we have a lot of choices how we're going to do this. Just looking at the shape that Mike's got, this is pretty much off the cardinal plans. Okay, these are ready to split. Nice job sanding them. Okay, next thing is Mike is tracing out on a part. Bless you.
Thank you.
I like to leave at least 1/4 of an inch material at this point in time and not get too cute, get it too thin or anything. And then just either with a Dremel tool or with the tool of choice, hollow them out before we go to the next step. Again, I do not like to make them real paper thin. I like to have a little bit of meat in there because these, especially at offline locations, they really take a beating. I don't know if you can see just about how much that's rough. We'll do the rest of that with the Dremel tool. But you do get a few grams of balsa wood out of them. Coming out all right?
Mm-hmm.
We really should have that smaller tool. I don't know what that is. Today we're trying to take advantage of some early morning time here to get the PVA on the mold. So this way through the course of the day we can put the 4 coats necessary on there. Again, the mistake is trying to put it on too thick or put it on all at once. The best thing is to just put on, just what I'm doing right now, just dust on some coats. And all through the day here, I can give it plenty of time to dry. Usually what I would like to do is give each coat at least 2 hours to dry. It'll be midday before I get back here, but that can sit out there. 4 coats of PVA. Okay, today all 4 of the coats of PVA are dry and we're going to lay up the mold. Now the first thing I want to do is get my first coat of tooling gel coat on here. Let that dry until I can't put my fingernail in it. And I'm using all the tips given me by Ed Gallagher. I'm just making sure I don't have any flaws in. Look in the actual PVA. It looks like there's one little drip back in the back. I'm not even going to worry about it. Certainly not going to do the job over because of that. The first coat is to mix up the gel coat. Get the first coat on as smooth as possible and try to avoid anything like a pinhole in the first coat. First coat in this system is, this is from Aerospace Composites. ETO1A. Needs to be mixed 10:1 by weight. PBW means parts by weight. So what we're going to do, we're going to mix this up off camera. This is a white gel coat. Remember the thing with gel coat, no strength at all, but it does pick up all the little imperfections. So we'll mix this up 10:1 on the gram scale off camera, and we'll be ready to paint the mold. Suggestions, you know, we always mix it by weight. Gram scale is the best way I know of. Couple of tips. This is a very thick material, and what I'm going to suggest everybody do is stir extremely slowly. We have the temperature turned way down in the shop. It's probably under 60 degrees in here, so it's nice and thick. But we're trying not to ingest any air bubbles into it. Air bubbles are always the death of any mold making procedure, whether it's rubber or whether it's a hard mold. Once this is totally mixed, and I think it's mixed, mix it another 2 minutes, and then we're going to real carefully and slowly paint the mold. Notice I only mixed about 190 grams of material because I want to just get one skim coat on the whole mold. I don't want to have a big drippy drooly mess. I'm in essence just putting on a thick coat of paint because this material has very little strength. Another tip that I've found, I like the white gel coat, and so does Ed Gallagher. We've both used gallons of that black gel coat that George sells, and even George admitted it was not his first choice with the molding projects he's working on. So if you get nothing else out of this video, if you're going to do a little hard mold and you're going to order from Aerospace Composites, order the white gel coat. Much easier to use, much friendlier. Now, of course, what we're trying to do is, most of all, is get rid of any air bubbles. We want the thinnest possible coat. And once I get this laid out, I'll use a little bit of heat, a hairdryer on a low setting, to just try to get out as many of the air bubbles as I can. But one of the mistakes I've made in the past, and Ed has helped me out with a little bit of a heads up on it, and I hope I can pass that on to you, is at this point in time, this coat has to dry, or should dry, and we know we're going to break the mold getting that piece out with that reverse curve. So we've kind of resigned ourselves to that fact. But as I'm brushing it on, I'm trying to get out any of the air bubbles that I possibly can. This just gets to be a little time consuming because I don't want to tear up the PVA either. Now while this is curing out, I can cut all the cloth, like the 6-ounce cloth, because I'm going to have a couple hours, maybe an hour, 45 minutes. At this cold temperature it takes even longer. And if Mike's able to make it today, we'll work on some of his projects, because we're making a wood fuselage and a composite one basically at exactly the same time. Way of trying to get rid of the last few air bubbles, what I'm doing is just the low setting on the heat gun, starting at one side and trying to rake through. Hairs also, these cheesy brushes always leave a few hairs. Oh, there's one as we speak. As we speak, there's a hair. Get rid of the hairs if possible. Just makes for a little, oh, another one. I feel like I'm mining for gold here, but trying to get rid of every air bubble so that the mold, this will be the surface that the mold picks up right here. Now once this kicks off, and I can put my fingernail, press it in there and not leave a mark, I'll laminate up the next of the layers and then just go into the thin cloth, the thick cloth. What I found out with this is what I really need is 6 layers of 6-ounce cloth at various spots to make it as solid enough. I know that's overkill. I probably only need 4, but the cloth is relatively inexpensive, and that extra yard or 2 of cloth really makes for a nice solid mold. Okay, now notice what we've done is put it right under a heating outlet. And by being under there, I'm hoping in an hour or 2 I can come back and start laying out the cloth. But I've planned this out in such a way that right now, while this is starting to gel up, I can at least get all the cloth cut to shape. We have the piece that we used for the Typhoon. Remember how we made the spine? And this will get taken out after the formers are in. But I did basically the same thing for Mike's fuselage with the center line. The fold is the center line. And we're going to transpose this right on a piece of 1/8-inch wood. This will get cut out, and what this should do is, in essence, when it's cut out, I can center line the whole fuselage from the motor to the tail. This will give me the center line, and I should maintain, because it's a folded piece, the fold gives you a real good shot of getting the same curve going front to back. So the next thing, Mike's got to go over there and steal a piece. You only need a 30-inch piece of wood, Mike. And you can use up one of those hard 12-pound pieces of wood. Because this, when we're all done, this is going to get cut out. This is just acting like a jig to hold the fuselage in place. Go a center line right down the center. Go right down the center of the wood, because that'll give you the least amount of chance that the wood will curve off to one side. Get it right in the middle. And it's the fold in the pattern that we really are interested in here. Now you ought to get some of those pins or tape. Tape would even be better. Tape that pattern right down in position before you make the cuts. Just tape one side and cut one side, or mark one side. Mark it, it'll even be better. Just mark it with a pen and you can cut it, because we're going to have to do a little final fit. Then put the tape on this side and mark the other side. And we're making it a little bit longer so it'll fit right up into the crutch. tape on this side, we trace that side, but we're maintaining the center line of the fold with the center line on the wood. And this way you assure some good chance of having it symmetrical. Just got to cut it, get a brand new blade, and leave the line on for now. Just leave the line on, and we'll take the last little bit off with a sanding block. As we just laid this right over the top to trace that shape out. And pretty much now, once we cut that, we'll be able to join this. Okay, I think you can take that off. And just leave the line on and block sand in that last little bit. And that should help us maintain a very nice straight center line on the whole fuselage. Like it's going to fit nice, and you got the right thickness. The trick with a fuselage that I found is get it as thick as possible right to where the tail starts and then draw it in. So it keeps it as rigid as possible. Just tack it for right now. And then we want to check down the center with our steel ruler, make sure we have a nice straight and that both sides are exactly the same. Yeah, just get it parallel. If you tack it every 6 inches, you're safe then if you have to rip it out, if it's crooked or you have to adjust it. Pull that center line right off. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's good now, it's all tacked in. Now you can run the glue seam on the inside of the fuselage. We ran the glue seam so this is nice and solid, it's nice and straight. And we calculated out where this horn is going to be, where that horn is going to be, and where we don't want to put formers in the push rod travel. So now as you measure each former, measure it and then take this dimension off here for each former. And you won't have to worry when you drop the wing and the body, you won't have to worry about the push rod tunnel, because this will hold it in place right to the last minute. We can cut this out on top, and when you put the top on, you can cut the rest of it out. So the next thing is to lay out the formers one by one, knowing this is going to be how wide it is, and this is going to be how long it is, and you want the grain side to side. Figure each one out too. Most important thing, use the 90 degree to T-square so that every former is 90 degrees. We keep that 90 degrees for the whole fuselage, because if you start putting angles in, it's a problem. See, and I always really like to keep that fuselage as wide as possible, as wide as practical, right up to the point where the tail starts, and that really gives you that extra little rigidity. So you got, even though that isn't real important, but you're not blocking your push rod channel now. Now you can go out, and we just did a rough thing. There'll be 5 formers in the fuselage for this. Just go right to the next one. And each time you do, go down and look at it. Make sure you're not bowing it out or pretzel. You know what that word pretzelizing it means?
Yes.
You on the last former?
Yeah.
Boy, this Mikey's winning the wheel pant race. He's got the wheel pant scarf, but he forgot to bring the plane. Ah! We can't line him up without the plane, so that leaves it. We can only work on a fuselages today. It's working over there. I just been doing this it's another hour on that. We'll be ready to lay up some of the thin cloth on that. The last thing, just put that piece in the tail. Oh, look at this guy. I'm telling you, this guy knows everything there is to know about stunt.
Huh?
Okay. This is the whole problem. He's got Peeps eating his wood.
Yeah,
Peeps took a former into his cage. Peeps, you're not supposed to touch Mikey when he's working, or he'll put that yellow hat back on.
Yeah, I'll go get the hat.
He'll get the hat. Anyway, that about's going to finish up the former part of this. And just in the nick of time. Of course, we're making this a dedicated 4-cycle plane. We know the tank has to come up off the mounts 5/8 of an inch. So what Mike is doing is stripping off some 1/2-inch balsa, and we're going to make little riblets in here, and then put an 1/8-inch plywood tank floor in. Now the reason we're making little ribs here is really not to save weight. The reason is if we decide years later we want to change to a different engine that doesn't mount to that height, it'll be very easy to get in there and just knock these pieces out, and it'll be the reverse of when we retrofit into the 4 cycles. So you want a nice tight fit. Yeah, okay, that's good. Tack them in first. I would say you need 4 or 5 in there, but you want the grain always to go side to side. and then make up a real accurate piece of 1/8 inch light ply. Because we know this plane's going to have a Sato 72. We know that's a good place to start the tank shim right there. Nice. Okay, now you want to get a real accurate, use an 1/8 inch light ply, get a real accurate tank floor. Make sure all the corners and edges and angles are 90 on that. Light ply where the grain orients, we want the grain going side to side. But make sure, put your mark on there. Make sure every corner is 90 degrees.
This will go right in.
We just happen to have 150 of these doublers that were cut out of light ply by our co-partners at SIG instead of cutting them out of plywood.
I think this is wide enough.
We got the tank shim in. I just want to show this. That's how high it goes up for a Sato, but we want to have an 1/8 inch of variance up and down. So what we did is took just a used tank, a shim, and that lines this piece up. The grain, the primary grain is going side to side. Now you can just tack that in, make sure it's down, put a couple drops on it, tack it, then take the tank out and the shim out. You know why, right? Because every once in a while we glue the shim right in. Okay. Just take the tank out before you make the permanent glue seam. And also point it down and run the glue seam inside and outside, both sides on that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Hold it up. And let the glue drip in there and drool around, because that's actually part of your structure right there. The glue in this way, generally it'll go down. You can slosh it around in the back. Let's see, you run that seam good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, get that seam so you can see it sloshing around in the bottom there. Okay. We're going to try to make half of this nose ring up. Okay, you can cut that out on a saw, and then we'll put the motor in and line up the nose ring. That's the next step. Put that tank boxes. That is, and because it's an 8 inch nose, it's shorter, it's lighter and stronger all at the same time. It's like when you make a diving board shorter. You win on every end of it. Going back and forth a few times to see which one of the shells really fits the closest. What we're going to try to do is use the Spitfire turtle deck. And what we did, we laid it out. Now you know this front edge is a little more than 4 inches, so we're trim those two pieces, and we'll make the sheet up ahead of time, because that gives us the joints that down in the side. You never want to have a joint up on the top if possible. Those pieces, flip them over and put them up in the front here. Put the tape on one side and we'll CA the joints. What to do, flip that over. You got the tape on it already. Run a glue seam on that. Just wipe it with a paper towel or a Q-tip or whatever. What we try to do is keep as many of these shells and as many of these sections as... In fact, I noticed one of them's missing. You have the nose piece by your house? Well, Peabody's got it.
Oh yeah, that's where it is.
Peabody has it. We try to keep all our shells, but it doesn't always work. The joint, try not to use any kicker. Okay, now you can, once that goes, let's go, just lightly sand it, just lightly.
Not yet.
Just get that smooth, and then we'll soak it with ammonia and wrap it, do the Al-Rabe kind of thing, wrap it with the big bandage. This nose ring is in here not real permanently, because when we put the Sato in here, I know the Tiger and the Sato line up very similar, but the final little fit we'll make with the Sato in place, either add a shim or grind some of this down. Okay, you got that ready to soak?
Yeah.
And we're just going to use hot water. If the wood is less than real good, it's a good idea to use a little ammonia. Ammonia is good, hot water, and he's trying to kind of pre-forming it in place. Also, what we did is roll the original plug around, make sure we don't have the sheet any bigger than we need it. We want it just to go to the end of the mold and even a little bit shorter. The hotter the water is, and if, in a worst of all worlds, if you really have some tough wood, you can boil water and just pour it on there. I've done that and let it sit in a little, in a bathtub or something, but that'll almost pre-form just with the hot water. It's always better to pre-form it a little bit like that. Think of the hours you save not having to carve this. I mean, Right now you'd be looking at a 3" by 30 block, all that hollowing, oh. What keeps me up at night just thinking about it. I love molding. Molding is your friend. This almost has the shape bent, it's pre-bent before we even put it on the mold. But now we want to do is take some of the John Pothia pins just to hold it in position. I want to get this centered on here, Mike, with a couple of pins so it doesn't start shifting back and forth. You can see it's almost pre-molded before we even do it. The pins just hold it in position, and you don't want to have anything come down off the bottom. So you want to kind of pre-trim that. You only want to go to the little line in the mold, and that's it. And I remember looking at the Al Rabe video. He was doing it with bed sheets. I guess you could do it with almost anything. But these are the sticky ones, the Ace bandages, and you want to try not to get any wrinkles or as few wrinkles as possible.
If you do, they sand right out.
Yeah, just make a mummy for me. Make a mummy and then we'll go have pizza. It's tough work carving these top blocks. Boy, when I think of how many blocks I spent 2 or 3 days carving and hollowing, oh my God. Just squeeze it. Now I like to really crush it down. Give it about 5 minutes of squeezing and then we'll just hang it up by the heating vent. Okay, nice and tight. There's a hook on one end, or did Peabody leave the hook out? Okay, hang it right up by the heating vent there. The heat will cure that, and tomorrow you are done. That is so convenient.
Perfecto.
Okay, pizza time.
Pizza, pizza.
Yeah, our next little step on this, now you can see what's happened is I'm able to stick my finger in here and not really leave a real impression, but yet it's still sticky. It means the epoxy is in the open state where I can laminate another coat on. Now if I let it dry overnight it would not be as good. It's better to be in this sticky chewing gummy state. I've got all the material, light, medium, and heavy cloth, and I'm going to go through here and just try to get as much of this on in one layer as I can. Now this resin that we use, and this is to build a mold, is not gel coat. It's called 102A, and this is mixed at 15 to 100, the ratio. Mold building resin is a little lower viscosity. It's more liquidy. It has a lot more strength. That's one of the things, but you would not want to use this as a gel coat. Again, this is one of the things I'm going to spend a little extra time. It's this extra stirring and trying. At this point, we don't really, it's not critical not to have an air bubble, but it's not good either. So I'll spend the extra time, and then I want to start laying this up. The lightest coats of material go on first, heaviest ones on top. Material, because of the viscosity, it's lighter. You can paint it right on. I try to paint the top and just let it run down. Remember, it's the first coat, the thin cloth, 1.5 ounces, then 2 ounce or 3 ounce, and then the rest of the mold will be 6 ounce. Just getting this on. The reason for having that thin cloth is because we want it to pack in the edges and corners. If you try to eliminate that step, you don't get the edges and corners nice. And sometimes a piece, because the gel coat has no strength, it'll just chunk away on you. Anyway, every time I see one of those, and Mike is working on one now, making a fuselage without having to carve a lot of blocks and molded parts, you get hundreds of hours you save. God. In an average modeler's life, how many top blocks do you carve? And they're all almost exactly the same in the end, except for small variations. I'm making sure I got a good wet coat on here. I just don't want to have any dry spots. All I'm worried about right now is no dry spots. You have a pretty nice big time window with this material, the 102. Light cloth first. Start at one end of the mold and just work my way down. And this is the first one. If it doubles up, it's not a problem. I won't leave the camera running all day. I think you can figure the whole deal out here. I had a half one here somewhere. Famous last words. Anyway, doesn't matter. We'll get a long one on here. Just start laying this up. And when the resin stops coming out through the mold, that's about enough light cloth here. That'll work, I'm sure. Need to bury that corner nice. Now I want to go in with more resin. I think you can figure the rest of this out. This is the fun part. This part usually goes pretty quick. Just need to make sure all the corners and edges are filled. The last thing, I'll put 6 layers of 6 ounce on here. You can pretty well figure this is going to run ahead. No sense just watching it over redundantly, but once that's all covered and laid up, that'll go to dry overnight. Basically ends a real nice layup. Went well. And we've made some progress on the wood fuselage and on the composite one. So I'd count this as a relatively good day. Now, the last time we were here, and that was when Ken Thompson was working out of his shop. Ken is no longer with us. He has gone off to other ventures, but let's see how that shop looks. And if you remember, boy, there was a time when this was an empty room. The amazing George Venturini. In case you haven't been here in a while, we started this 3 years ago, Jimmy? Yeah. And this is Wendy's wonderful milling machine, among other things. Now I know people like Warren Walker have these incredible shops, but Warren, I'm kind of proud of this one. You don't get down here with the camera much, but this is one of the reasons I brought this down here. George Venturini has made an award-winning model, and this is all molded. Every part on this is molded from molding rubber. And he's going to take it out of the case for us and give us a little show and tell. This has just won the East Coast Major, some kind of major modeling award. What did you win, the lottery or something with this, George? I saw it down in a hobby shop the other day.
Won a few contests with it, actually, to tell you the truth.
Won a few?
Yeah, about
It's cool.
3. Couple first.
Now this is a model of an actual, what was it, a television show?
It was a TV show from the 60s.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Maybe that's easier.
Yeah.
All molded. Some of the cockpit details.
Nothing's going here.
What you did is you bought all these videos of this TV show. This was a TV show when, in the 50s like?
In the 60s.
Okay, you bought all the videos, and then from the videos you can...
From the videos, I...
Windy videos, yeah.
Yeah, from the videos, I...
All right, there's the XL5.
I made some drawings on AutoCAD.
I remember you had this all on computer, too.
And then, but I drew it to what I calculated to be full size based on reference drawings like this where they show you the size of a person and you estimate the height to be, say, 6 foot, whatever height,
Yes.
you know.
Boy, this is before the time of Steven Spielberg, huh? This is like pre-Windy video time. Look at this thing.
Takes off from a rail.
Yeah. And then the trolley flies off. What they don't show you on the other side of the hill is probably about 6,000 trolleys, all scrap metal. It shows you the thinking of the...
Carbon fiber trolleys.
Yeah. But I made drawings of what it would be like in full scale.
And even the cockpit interior is right.
Yeah, and then I scaled it to a size that was convenient to different materials. For example, the main body.
And then there's the model. Anyway, just thought you'd enjoy that little
Listen, I don't
glimpse
have
of
time to
George's
talk right now. I got
project.
people
That
here
is
doing- I'm
a
doing a
cool
video.
model. We got the rocket tabulators going and the fajubulators and 25 wheels.
These pods are vacuum formed.
You made it with molding rubber.
This part is
Tubes?
this cast. No, this is cast urethane.
Okay.
These items in here are cast urethane. These are cast.
And even the little things, the jewels or whatever they are down here.
Okay. And you might want to See.
I want to see the guy in the front.
Okay, well, in the real show, this detaches from here.
Okay.
This detaches from here, okay? And I didn't know when I was making this what I should do. Should I make it detachable? Should I make it off? But I didn't want to show any connections.
Look at that.
So it's held together with a magnet.
Oh, okay. So it magnetizes on.
Yeah, there's 2 magnets in there, 2
Yeah.
puck magnets that hold it together.
This is another little, like a gun turret or something.
That's an
up here?
observation, some type of telescope observation dome.
What I thought when I saw it in the hobby shop was how nice the details on it in that case really showed up nicely.
Well, this is actually what the interior looks like according to.
And you have all the molds to make another one now.
I have a lot of the molds to make it. Some of the stuff was one of a kind stuff, but other stuff was
Yeah,
molds.
yeah.
You know, I have the mold to make this main body, to make these pieces here, to make this
Right,
back
the
piece.
fins. I remember you were
Fins,
making
yeah.
the fins. One of the last
Actually, I
things
have to remake the mold for the fins. I have another 1 or 2 sets of fins, but the mold to the base, so you could actually take it and tip it.
Oh, without it
Without it-
for
without-
transportation
Yeah.
purposes, yeah.
Well, when you tip it, you hear pieces battling around. That's
Yeah, yeah.
windows that didn't go in right the first time. Brass tubing, rectangular tubing. The only thing I bought were the wheels, they're tail wheels for.
Oh, like
Model
ordinary
airplanes.
model airplane tail
Yeah.
wheels. Now, for years, I've been making balsa wood boxes and ripping them off the molds. Look at this great little thing, and it's infinitely adjustable.
Pizza, wait, you need the pizza.
Get that pizza out of there. Watch how this box thing works. I am so impressed. I thought this is worth putting on it. We want to make little boxes to put the rubber mold. We're making a little rubber mold for a plastic part. Look at this little thing. Now, all you do is put the clamps in. Look at this guy.
What a guy.
Put Windy right out of business. I'm out of here. I'm devastated. You guys are just so smart. It's nice working with professionals. How come nobody ever says that at my house? All right.
I heard it the other
That's
day.
your-
Someone called you a real pro.
Yeah, my wife probably. Now that becomes the box for the molding rubber. Look at that. How cool is that?
Beautiful.
Are you impressed, Jimmy?
I'm impressed.
Now George has promised to make me a nice set of these for my own job for one low price, $19.99.
Fits all.
I'll pay in any car.
Parts that Jimmy's gonna mold. These are for what's a robot toy or something?
Mr. Machine.
A Mr. Machine. So he's got a base plate with the little pieces CA'd. You got that new box that George is gonna make me my own free copy of at my and put it under the Christmas tree for me. Pour
Infinitely
the
adjustable
molding,
box.
infinitely adjustable. Pour the molding rubber. Look at that. George has to tape the edges of the box to the piece of plastic, and he started pouring the molding rubber, getting out the pinholes, and sooner or later he'll hit it with a hairdryer, try to get the rest of them out. I love watching the bubbles come up when you apply the heat. Look at those bubbles coming up. Now pay attention, Larry Cunningham. This is the part you always have trouble with, is those bubbles coming up. Oh, Larry's making wheel pant molds here. Give me another toothpick. I just pop them with a toothpick. That'll work.
I did.
Here it goes. As he makes the pancakes. Did I ever tell you the time I volunteered to make pancakes up in Vermont? The fire department's still talking about it.
Use molding rubber, did you?
My batter looked like this molding rubber, believe me.
No one could eat more than one.
Yeah, the fire department was not entertained making a call for a flaming souffle. Now today, one of the things I want to do is set the wheel pants on here where they're parallel to the fuselage and they're not towed out and towed in. So for that we need the plane here. You see how easy it is to make that crooked?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now point the tail down just a little bit. A little bit more. It's still not perfectly level. You got to look at it from far away. Okay, now we'll take a little impression of that. We have the two little dents where the wire wants to go when this is level. So we have a reference now so that this doesn't wind up pointing down or pointing up. Notch that out, and now we're gonna notch this side so that that slides over so it's right in the center of the wheel. Take that off for now, and you can make that notch. See where that notch is? Just notch it in a little bit wider until this goes more and more and more till it's right in the middle of the wheel. We're pressing it toward the wheel. Of course, we need to take out half of the amount for the wheel. Okay, so now you can just take that out with a knife. Because these are still rough, we don't know how much. It would determine how thick the wheel is, that notch and that notch. And see how much more we have to go. Because now you see where it's rubbing? Now you got to pick up the high spot, but when you pick up the high spot, you don't want to do that or that. You can kind of use the wheel for reference, but look from the side of the plane and make sure that's parallel, and I'll put another dimple in there. Another dimple chad. Is that straight? Mm-hmm. Okay, now we just notch it. Let me just press that with my hand. And you can see that's your reference line now. We have one side notched pretty well anyway. The inside is all just sealed with CA temporarily to harden up the wood. Roughening up the wire so we can attach this. Just a parting wheel, just make it rough. For the next step, we want to make a little plywood reinforcing rib that's going to allow these to come apart so we can replace the wheels. Okay, you can just cut this out on a jigsaw, Mike. Okay, now that's mounted relatively straight. And I've CA'd the joint just temporarily because we still want to be able to fine tune it. Now Mike's going to put on this side that piece of light ply, that little rib. Next step is going to take this 1/8 inch plywood rib and CA it in place. See, this will give it some strength where right now it's real vulnerable right down by the wire. Alright, CA that on. Okay, now that part is glued on. Now you can take the wheel out. Just unsolder that joint and take the wheel out. The wheel out, we want to get in there and put some fiberglass, some carbon fiber, something to stiffen up that part right where the wire is. Okay, we put like a double postage stamp piece of fiberglass in there with thick CA. Now we have the clamshell part that's going to fit on here. Mike's going to make up the same thing in light ply, except this time we're going to leave a corner here and a corner here for putting the screws in. Okay, this is going to be the next step. Put this piece on here, glue that up, Mikey, and then we're ready to figure out how we're going to attach these with blind nuts or screws. Mike's working on those wheel pants. We're getting near the end of this video. This is, and we're probably going to have to pick the rest of the work up on another tape, but this is the shell that ultimately is going to go on part of his plane, right from the mold, and it's the same mold we use for the Spitfire and the Nobler. And that's what's nice is one mold. You can see how nice that is. We'll trim it off relative to the line, and again, we have many dedicated videos on making these shells for anybody really excited about the objective of molding. But molding certainly is one of the ways we're going to end up. We have this guy finished, and we always give this an extra 24 hours to cure up. And we've covered a lot of little projects on this video that may or may not interest modelers of every skill level. Now, we tried doing this a different way, but it didn't work out. What Mike's doing is cutting the other piece of plywood so we can glue both pieces of plywood with the blind nuts on, so they'll be together and they'll line up the two shells. By having the two pieces of plywood glued together, it just makes installing the blind nuts a lot easier. The way I suggest doing this is drill one hole and put one blind nut in. Then with that installed, go back and drill a second one. If you try to drill both at once, it seems like they never really line up. Once one blind nut is in, that ensures that this one is in good alignment. Okay, now the blind nuts are in, we need to trim the screws off with a parting wheel. And then while this is in position, see how creative that is? Mikey, you're a genius. Anyway, but that'll hold that in alignment that we don't have to, if you do it the way we originally planned, I won't say whose mistake that was. Anyway, this improvement brought to you by Peeps. All right. Now what we want to do is we just want to, the blind nuts are in. See, that holds that in position. We just want to tack glue this in place, then take the screws out so that we don't glue the parts together. Okay, just tack glue it, baby. Okay, now we just have it tacked together. Now take the two screws out. And then we could do a permanent, glue it permanently and do a final sanding on that part of it. Walker gave me this great penetrating oil, and what I want to do is put a, before we put glue on these blind nuts, permanent glue, put a drop of that penetrating oil. By the way, Ward, this stuff works great. So just get some oil on the threads. There you go. I'm so impressed.
I knew you would be.
He's eating your sunglasses here or something. Anyway, we're going to get as much into this wheel pan thing as we can, but I know we're coming up on the end of the video. And we try to pack a lot onto each tape, a lot of different projects, so everybody can have some interest in it. But wheel pants, the next thing, once that's together, Mike, you got to sand it all out. Glue seam inside and outside, because then you've got the final sanding, you can blend that light ply right in. Squeeze it, get it squeezed. One do's and don'ts. I mistakenly, when I was making one set of these wheel pants one time, decided I was going to harden up an edge with thin CA without realizing I had just glued the thing back together. So you want to sand it, but you can't use any CA on it. Just do a sanding. You can do that over by the...
Okay.
Okay, now the first thing, we can dress this off and even up the whole way the wheels come out with that little drumming the sanding drum. Get these all evened up. What's easy here is you can, the part you can do where the wheel goes, it's very easy to do this way too. One final thought here as we finish out the video. How important it is to have wheel pants on some designs, and this is just one. The ballerina just happens to be one. Without the wheel pants, it kind of loses a lot of its identity. A cardinal, I guess you could have either way. But we're going to be doing one real soon, I hope, the next time we have a chance of doing the fiberglass wheel pants on the carbon gear. That seems to be a subject a lot of people would want to at least try to pick up some information on. But for this time, the wooden gear, I think this has given everybody, including myself, a couple of thoughts on how to do these. Well, Mike didn't do it that quick, but I just was thinking it'd be good to have a little reference to these that we made in who the hell knows, 1990 or something. Be a good little way to do it. Prefer the easy way, carbon fiber gear, carbon fiber wheel pants with a little detent. Instead of spending days and weeks sanding and carving. On Mike's fuselage for the four-stroke plane, gonna make a real exotic cowl on a cowl mold. So hope there's some things on every video that'll interest everybody. We're gonna do the wing. The wing is coming. And I hope you've really enjoyed the tape. Next time we get to work on this fuselage, we hope we're going to have our 72 Sato in-house, so we can do all the fine-tuning up by the nose. But in the meantime, we could make the rest of the top block parts. All that's coming up on the next couple of videos. And again, please share them. Please pass the information on to other people, no matter what the information is. If you think they can use it. We're looking forward to having a great Christmas with our family. Thanks to Warren Walker for the Christmas decoration. Thanks to everybody. It's just been great being alive this time of year. It's great being alive anytime. And from Karen and Wendy, our whole family, to your whole family, hope this is a wonderful Christmas. Hope you have all the blessings that we've shared over the years. I really feel privileged to be able to share my life with the people that enjoy sharing it with me in a unique way of video that was really not possible to other generations. A great Christmas coming. We're only a few days away from, I hope, a really, really great Christmas. And all the little people in my village, they wish they all flew stunt. Wouldn't it be wonderful if they did? And the smell of Lionel trains and cookies baking in the oven, a little bit of snow outside, just doesn't get any better than this. See you on the next tape. We will be working on that wing soon. And we even have, to show you how we've gone overboard this Christmas, we even have a village in our dining room. She has a village next to the gold mirror that I refinished with Brodak dope years ago. Mike's wing and tail are in silver.